Good morning and welcome to Inside Oakwood with Dr. Pollard. Good morning, Dr. Pollard. How are
Hey,
you
good
doing this
morning. Good
morning?
morning, Donna. How are you doing this morning? I am doing really well. It's a beautiful morning here in the Tennessee Valley. I'm doing
Yes,
well.
it is. Nice and cool and crispy out there. That's the way I like it.
It is, it is. And in this part of the country, the trees are changing colors, the leaves, so they're almost iridescent in their beauty. And it's just beautiful today. Just beautiful.
Well, we do have a really interesting topic that we're going to be talking about, kind of heavy. So, do you have a word this morning before we get started, or you want to?
Yes, yes. No,
Okay.
no, no, no. We always do. We always begin with the word because that's really the foundation for the work that we do here on Inside Oakwood and at WJOU. And interestingly, the passage comes this morning from Joel chapter 2, verse 28. And it says, "And it shall come to pass that in the last days I will pour out my spirit." Let me just read it here. "Upon all flesh, your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, and upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit." What is clear in this passage in the spiritual realm is that God anticipates a day when there will be the power that we will experience the power of an indiscriminate outpouring of his spirit. And what that spirit will do upon men and women, upon old and young, across vocations, handmaids, these are servants. God says that he will pour out his spirit, and that spirit will inspire and trigger visions and dreams and hopes and motivation and all of those wonderful things in the spiritual arena. But it doesn't limit itself to the spiritual arena, because in the educational arena, we see the same thing, that God is an equal opportunity employer. And he bestows his dreams, his visions, his hopes, his dreams upon all people, across all genders, across all classes. And that's one of the things I love about the gospel in the last days. Today, we are talking, especially with some of I call them our sisters in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. These professions historically have been very much the enclaves of male control and male domination. I should say, let me stay away from the explosive language of male highly over representation of men. How about that? How about that? That sounds a little bit differently.
Okay.
But the reality is that we need the complementary balance of all of our people in every space and in every place. And you know that there are some, and of course these scientists today can tell us about it, Donna. There are
Mhm.
some areas of medical research that were only highlighted, emphasized, and actually opened up when we attracted more females into medicine. Issues in women's health, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things. That's true of psychology, it's true of medicine, it's true of science and engineering, et cetera. So with that in mind, we're talking about that today. And we are talking about women in STEM and what Oakwood is doing to increase the representation of women in general and women of color in particular in these important disciplines. So that's what
Mhm.
we're talking about today. And I'm
Okay.
excited about it because our guests are experts in this area, and we're going to have a great conversation today.
Well, let's kind of set it up for those who are listening who really probably haven't been able to wrap that around their brains yet. So let's start with the Alabama Advanced Partnership Grant. And what does that have to? Well, is this okay? Where do you want to go?
No, no, I mean,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but it's a conversation, right? So we'll get our cues. Okay.
But I want to get my cue from you. So
Okay,
where
no
do you want to
problem.
start?
Okay, so we'll start by just doing some broad things, and then we'll talk about what's happening here at Oakwood, which is just a
Okay.
wonderful thing. Okay, so one of the things we know in higher education is that there is a STEM gap. There's a STEM gap between women and girls in science, technology, and engineering and math. And so this is what we see. Girls and women are systematically tracked away from science and math throughout their educations. That's interesting. And I'd like to know why. I'd like to hear from these women of STEM why that's true. Limiting their training and options to go into these fields as adults. So when you look at biological scientists, chemists and material scientists, computer and mathematical occupations, engineers and architects, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, women are significantly underrepresented. So we start there. So why are there so few? And then we can talk about that. And then how do we begin to solve the equation? How do we begin to solve the equation? How do we begin to encourage young women to pursue wherever their giftedness takes them? And that's what we're talking about with the advanced grant here at Oakwood University. So that gives us some background, and our leaders here can help guide us in these conversations as we learn and grow in dialogue together.
Okay, so you want to pose that question? Let's start with Dr. Vanterpool. He had several questions there, so
Sure did.
You can pick one and respond to.
Yes, well, I can definitely kind of answer that, and I can just tell you just from personal experience, even though I always loved science, I thought I was going to be a teacher because, you know, when I was younger, scientists weren't the women thing to do. We always heard teachers were where a lot of the women were, and there were certain things, and I thought about that, but it wasn't until in 5th grade, there was a teacher, African-American woman, she was a scientist, and she volunteered her time to come into the classroom and do experiments with us. And that was the first time I saw a Black female scientist. And so she realized I was really good in science, and I was so excited. And she spoke to me after class one day. She said, you know, you're really good in science. I said, I know, I love science. She said, what do you want to do? I said, teacher. She said, a science teacher or a scientist? So I was like, scientist. So she was kind of trying to gear me towards that direction. She was my mentor that entire year. So I really wasn't thinking scientist, I was thinking medicine, but later I changed that to scientist. So that mentorship, but it was the mindset that, you know, we didn't really hear women were in science. This was the first time in 5th grade that I actually saw that. So, I mean, there's so much in it, but I guess we'll talk about it a little bit later, but this is why our advanced grant that we have funded with the National Science Foundation and partnerships with other schools are so important to address this issue.
Wow. So can you talk a little bit about, and we're going to get to Dr. Lisa James, because we want you to respond to this question as well as, do you feel as though why young people or young women are steered away from science? But can you tell us about the other partnerships, the schools that we have that are involved with the Alabama Advanced Partnership Grant, Dr. Vanterpool?
Yes, so we have partnership with several schools. It's an alliance with schools in Alabama, with UAB being one of the biggest ones we have. We also have Alabama A&M University. We also have UAH, amongst others that we partner with. And we have joint seminars, workshops. We're actually going to have a huge combined symposium coming in April. So I'm really excited about that. And to really address women, minority women in STEM, and just general those that are underrepresented and those that are underserved. So we need to, these partnerships help with that. So we have a continuous communication with them.
Wonderful. So Dr. Lisa James, and then we're going to get to Ms. Crystal Lewis as well, Dr. Crystal Lewis Luke, and hear from her as well. But what are your thoughts, Dr. James, about why women may possibly be steered away from science?
Well, as Dr. Vanterpool mentioned, I believe exposure at an early age is the key for women. Giving a little bit of background about my experience as well, I knew of no one growing up who majored in mathematics outside of mathematics education for teaching. I was blessed to have many female math teachers, but I didn't know of anyone who did anything outside of teaching with a degree in mathematics. So when it came to me and I realized my talent in mathematics, I came to Oakwood University. I didn't even think about majoring in math until it just kind of kept drawing me in. And even when I majored in mathematics, I still wasn't sure of what I wanted to do with it because I didn't know anyone who looked like me who was doing something with a degree in mathematics. So I think exposure is important. And also through the advanced grant program that we had Dr. Donna Ginther to come and speak with us. And in her research, she noted that the dividing gap between women advancing in STEM is mathematics education. And, you know, for some reason, our females, our young girls are not pursuing advanced classes in mathematics and so forth, the way men are. So I think another thing is we need to change the language, how we express mathematics to young women, young children, period. Because a lot of us say, oh, you know, I was never good at mathematics. So when I talk about mathematics, people are like, oh no, mathematics. You know, we have to change the tone of how we talk about mathematics.
Yes, yes. Well, I was raising my hand because I know I'm terrible with math. Don't ask me about any multiplication problem. But I admired my mom, and that's why I didn't go into the medical field, because she was so good at math. I was like, I can never do that. But anyway, thank you so much. We also have with us Dr. Crystal Lewis-Luke. She's an OU alumnae, Director of Personal Care Innovation at Bradford SOAP, and author of the book, The Diamond Formation: How to Thrive and Survive in Tough Times. So we want to welcome her as well to the discussion and ask you first, what was your first experience with STEM, and how did you end up creating a career around that?
Absolutely. Well, first, I just want to say thank you for having me. It's just such a pleasure to give back to my alma mater, Oakwood University, and I'm just so glad to be here. To answer your question, in high school, I actually hated chemistry. I just didn't feel like it was relevant to me at the time. I didn't see how I could apply it in daily life. And actually, it wasn't until I came to Oakwood University, I met Dr. Kenneth Lahane, and he actually recruited me. I was supposed to be studying biomedical sciences, and he said, no, you should do biochemistry. And once I took his chemistry course, I just remember realizing all of these chemical reactions, acid-base reactions are simply what happens when you perm your hair. Those kinds of connections were so amazing to me. And as a result, I got to see more and more how we use chemistry in daily life, the application of all we learn in daily life. And so honestly, it was seeing Dr. Kenneth Lahane, Dr. Glenn Phillips, and seeing, again, we talked about exposure, seeing other Black PhDs helped me to feel confident to know I can do this too. So just being in the presence of Oakwood and seeing so many Black professionals, that in and of itself was just such a powerful message to me that I could accomplish the same as well.
So most of you have already kind of touched on some of those best practices for making sure that we're inspiring and encouraging minorities to go into STEM and science and things like that. So what are some of the other best practices for mentoring women and minorities into these fields? Dr. Vanterpool? Oh, your mic is muted.
I'm so sorry. There are so many different things we can do, but the best practices in mentorship is to make sure that we as women leaders or as minority leaders we're accessible to the community. We cannot get consumed in our position, and we have to remember that not only are we mentors for our students at Oakwood, but in the community, right? And so I try to do this with my students to kind of build a little pipeline here where I mentor my students, and especially with my female students. And then I make sure that they become those leaders to go out in the community, and they partner with other schools like Oakwood Academy and Highland Elementary and the CDL here on campus. So the first thing is to be accessible and establish a pipeline and to be more approachable. So those are some of the things that we see. We have workshops. We bring back our alums that are successful, so they need to see it. And another thing we do, like as soon as you walk in our department, we have a wall of excellence where we have our alums who just faces of these students in white coats from med school, dental school, graduate school. So when they walk in, they see it, and these young kids, I hear them walking through the building with their family, like, oh. So these are some things that we just need to do to make sure that they're, just start some best practices and do it and grow it.
And I guess I would say that Dr. James probably is implementing some best practices in her classroom as well to inspire and encourage young minorities and women, because we hear from a parent that's saying that she is truly a blessing to her student, a major sophomore, a math major, a sophomore, and is sharing that, Dr. James, you actually sit down and talk with your students and help them through it. Do you use these opportunities to encourage them to go into STEM or mathematics and other areas of science?
Absolutely, Donna. That's why I'm here at Oakwood. I want to share the experiences that I have, and I want the students who were like me just a few years ago. I say that jokingly, but I'd like the students who were like me just a few years ago to have to know more than I did when I was in their position. I want them to be exposed to different careers. I've had the opportunity to take students on trips to career overviews. I took them to an insurance company in Chattanooga, where they learned what an actuarial scientist does. That's a career that is really, only 2% of actuaries are African-American.
Mhm.
And that's a career that's heavy in mathematics and statistics and so forth that, a lot of our students, we don't hear about, we don't know about it. And so I had the opportunity to take them on trips such as that. Also, through a grant with the Department of Education, we developed something called Win for STEM. And that is, we have 2 activities for women. WIN means Women's Initiative for STEM. And it involves, we have a symposium every spring semester, and also in the summer, we have a summer bridge program. And it's for, the summer bridge program is for incoming freshmen coming into Oakwood. And through that program, the students, females who are interested in majoring in STEM, we just kind of nurture them. We bring them in, we nurture them. And now this was our first summer doing it. And the group of students, they just have a nice collaboration together. And we just love it. It's the start of something great, we believe.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Luke, I want to hear from you. You mentioned how you really appreciate to be able to share. Can you share any of the experiences you've had with mentoring those in your area as a career professional?
Certainly. One of the things I love doing the most is presentations. So I'll go to different colleges and universities and really share the work that I did in my graduate program, as well as some of the things that we do now as we work on bar soap. As I do that, I have the opportunity to make connections with young women and really give them my contact information, and we get to really talk about the struggles that they're going through in their academic journey. One thing I'll quickly share is, for me, one of the blocks that I had was a mental block in terms of how can I actually succeed? Can I do this? Am I enough? And so I know what it feels like as women to go through these questions. And so I'm certainly here for them just to reach out and let them know I believe in you. Because sometimes we just need to hear, I believe in you and you can do this. And so that's really something that I always want to make sure that I impart on all of the young women that I come into contact with.
So mentorship has really been important in all of your lives, doctors here. Dr. Pollard, this is really a great opportunity for Oakwood University to continue this with this Alabama Advanced Partnership Grant. All of these things that we've talked about, the best practices and the mentoring, is happening here at Oakwood University.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And if there are young women right now who are thinking about choosing STEM careers, there's no better place than Oakwood University to pursue it. A, you have the role models. B, you have the support, right? The financial support. But more than financial support, you also have another important element, which is the social and cultural support. One of the things we learned when I was working over at another school, and I served as a member of the School of Medicine Admissions Committee, we recognized that there is a competitive range in qualifying for medicine that pretty much guarantees that people will be able to complete the program and to succeed. And what we were able to do was to through testing those physicians who had actually graduated and were in practice, we were able to go back through assessing their incoming MCAT scores, what that competitive range looked like. Now, why was that important? What it did was, first of all, it removed the kind of numerocracy that the higher the MCAT score, the more likely it is that a person will be a better physician and will succeed in medical school. But we found that that was not necessarily true. It was a range in which anyone within that range then would be able to perform and to deliver the services of medicine acceptably. But more importantly than that, what it began to identify was that it wasn't just test scores, but there were also psychosocial factors that contributed to the successful matriculation through medical school. So when you come to an institution, not only do you want great role models, you also want the psychosocial, cultural support of an institution to make sure that the students, the young women in this case who come, actually are in a space where success is what is promoted and expected of them, right? So Dr. Crystal Lewis-Luke said, she asked herself, can I make it? Can I do this? See, that those are not intellectual questions per se. Those are questions of emotional appeal and support. Do I believe in myself enough to believe that I could do this? And all of us have been in spaces where we need someone to come alongside us and say, you can do this. You can, I see it in you, you can do it. And that's what Oakwood is doing in its work with women in STEM. It's saying, you can do this. Now, I've told this story before, and I know Elaine and Lisa will tell me that they heard it, and that's okay. But if you just let me do it one more time. When my daughter, my younger daughter, Karen, was at Oakwood Elementary, I'll never forget it. She was in 3rd grade, came home, we were doing homework, and we got to math. And she said, I don't want to do this, Daddy. I said, why? She said, because math is for boys. That's what she said. So I went right back to Mrs. Harvey. Many of you remember Mrs. Delma Harvey. I went right back to Mrs. I said, guess what Karen said, Delma? She said, don't worry, I'll fix that. So, and she did 2 things. She told Karen that she could do math, but she had her sit right next to her desk. Today now, many years later, Dr. Crystal Lewis-Luke, my daughter Karen is a pharmacist at Huntsville Women and Children's Hospital, because somebody said, you can do this. Now, wait, we can dissect where she got the message from. It's for boys. Yes, we need to figure all of that out. But now that's what she's doing. And I think for our young women in STEM, what I want to say is that you've got wonderful role models here, both male and female. Notice Crystal pointed to a male role model, Dr. Ken Lai-Hing, remember? So it takes the whole village to do this. It takes the whole village.
And since we're talking about women and minorities, I see the number of women at Oakwood University going into these areas is increasing. Is that right, Dr. Vanterpool?
Absolutely. We see a huge rise, and I don't know if it's COVID or something, but I guess people are getting more interested in the sciences because science is out in the forefront right now. So I am monopolizing on this to recruit as many to STEM as possible, all the STEM fields. I think this will be a game changer. So let's use something negative for positive. COVID has been something, but it has sparked the curiosity of a lot of our minorities. And so we're going to keep pushing that.
Wow. And Oakwood University is ready to bring them in. So I understand there's a big event coming up. Can we share about that event that's coming up now?
Sure. So today at 12, we have a virtual event best practices for mentoring women and minorities. Thank you for sharing that. We have an outstanding keynote speaker, as well as panelists from the different STEM areas. And as you can see, Dr. Crystal Lewis-Luke is one of our phenomenal panelists, and I'm really excited to hear what is going on. So you don't want to miss this. This is virtual, be both on YouTube and Facebook Live. And I will encourage anybody that you know, please tell them to sign on and watch it. And just like I'll tell my students, this is really important. So that's the event today, and it starts at noon. It's a virtual event.
And it will be on YouTube and Facebook, so you can just pull it up on the Oakwood University Facebook page or YouTube page. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that speaker, Shireen Obear.
Yes, so she was actually nominated by Dr. Patrick Ochang. And when we read her bio, we said, whoa, she is amazing. She is the dean at the Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanoengineering. And she is not just a phenomenal scientist, but she is also a mentor for a lot of individuals. So you want to come and hear what she has to say.
All right, Dr. Pollard.
Well, we'll circle back to where we started. Joel chapter 2, verse 28, in the last days, I'll pour out my spirit. This is evidence that God gives his gifts indiscriminately. And one of the things I learned, I've never said it publicly, but I minored in feminist studies when I was in California doing my doctorate, doing the first one. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I learned there was very eye-opening, is the social construction of professions. Mm-hmm. That once you take a human being and you compartmentalize them, head and heart, then what began to happen, and it's a subtext, it's a historical subtext for why women choose certain professions and others they don't. Professions of the head involve engineering and math and all of those things. See, that's kind of the professions of the heart, nursing, teaching, etc. See, compassion. But what we know from reading the Bible is that we are not compartmentalized, that we are whole people. And that's one of the doctrines that Oakwood education emphasizes. We're educating the whole student, both head and heart and hand. And so today I'm grateful for these leaders who are deconstructing the professions and saying to any young woman or young man, whatever God has gifted you in, follow your dream, follow your vision, because that God will also give you success. If he's given you the vision, he will make sure that the provisions are in place for you to accomplish it. So that's our message today. And that's what you see here in our Women in STEM conversation.
And as you were speaking, I wanted to come back, though, before we actually close it out completely, and ask Dr. Crystal Lewis-Luke to just share a little bit about her book, The Diamond Formation, How to Thrive and Survive in Tough Times, before we close out.
Absolutely. It actually fits this conversation because it talks about my graduate program and that journey of wondering if I was enough and really going through the different stages of a diamond, the amount of pressure that it has to go through in order for it to actually land on as a ring on someone's finger. And so many times we look at the ring, but we don't really think about the process and how much it goes through to get there. And so I use that as a template to just describe the pressure and the challenges that went through, that I had to go through in my doctoral experience, and how God used all that pain and all that pressure to just birth purpose. And so that's a synopsis of my
Amen. Amen.
Wow. Dr. Pollard, we're going to let you try it one more time.
Oh, my goodness. No, that says it all. The pressure that produces the diamond. Thank you, doctor. The pressure that produces the diamond. That's really what we submit ourselves to. And once we submit ourselves to that, God is faithful. He's promised that he'll bring us forth polished and perfected. So thank you, doctor. That's a wonderful analogy and a great way to end. So bring us all of your diamonds and watch us polish them to perfection.
Perfect. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Pollard, and bringing your guests with us to talk about this important issue. We'll see you next time on Inside Oakwood, right here on 90.1 FM, WJOU.